I'm going to first talk a little bit about my background and where I came from, and talk about how faith played into my profession as a law enforcement officer. And then share a little bit about my family's own personal tragedy and some things that I took away from that. And then maybe talk about some things as far as parents with their kids, if they get involved in law enforcement issues, as we call them. You know, so some of this gets emotional, but so if I have to stop for a second and you know, pull myself together, you know, I don't mind it if you don't mind it. It doesn't mean I don't like talking about it. You know, I do. It's just it gets to be very emotional sometimes, and you know, not just my story, but the other story I'm going to share here. So, I was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, and I am also one of 13 children. I'm the 9th out of 13 children. When I was a junior in high school, I decided I wanted to get into law enforcement. I wanted to be a policeman. And I'm not sure why. You know, at that time, my dad owned a music store, and my mom was a nurse, but after 2 or 3 of the kids, she ended up being a stay-at-home mom. And so, but I decided when I grew up I wanted to be a policeman. So I accomplished half of that anyway. I became a policeman. I never grew up. Now, most of the speakers, you know, that I hear have props in that. I'm thinking, you know, what can I have props there? You know, I thought for sure Danny would be handing out free books, you know, to everybody who's books there, but that didn't happen. But I'd like to call Emily, if you could come up here. This is my youngest, Emily, and just you know, kind of give you where I came from as far as getting into you know, police work. Last Tuesday, I was having a really hectic day, trying to multitasking with everything, and my bride here works on Tuesday evenings, you know, later hours, so it's up to me to get dinner on the table. Well, I'm ashamed to say it was getting close to 8 o'clock, and there's still no dinner on the table, and I'm talking to one of these coaches from the soccer team, and I said, you know what, I really have to, you know, get dinner on the table, or I'm in trouble with the wife. So I get done talking to him, and I hang up, and I go off into the kitchen, and here's Emily peeling some potatoes I had set out. I said, Emily, what are you doing? She goes, well, I heard you were busy, and so I'm just trying to help. You know? And she was beaming with happiness. And I said, you know, that is really the reason, you know, I think about that I got into law enforcement. Okay, thank you. We have a profession where we can go out there and help people. And I even consider when we're arresting people, we're helping people. We're helping the victims. We're helping these people themselves. You know, hopefully they don't go on, you know, to bigger and you know, worse things. So I pursued law enforcement, not to get into gun battles, you know, not to get in bar fights, but really I wanted to, you know, be out there in a way and to help people. So I went off to college in Livonia, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. I thought, where better to learn about police work than Detroit? And so while I was there, I got married to my wife Lynn, and we had started our family there. And when I graduated, about 7 or 8 months later on, I was able to get the job here in Park Ridge. So I've been a police officer, I was a police officer here in Park Ridge since 1981, when I was at the young age of 21. Our family continued to grow in numbers, and Lynn and I had 10 children before she was killed in an automobile accident in June of 1999. In 2002, I started a new chapter in my life when I married my children's pediatrician. And Linda has 2 daughters, and Linda and I have Emily, so now who has the 13 children. And actually have even the same amount of boys and girls as my mom and dad did, so it's kind of interesting. So, the aspect I love about police work, though, is that every day on the street was different. And, you know, like I said, I think if I was still a patrol officer, I'd still be on the job today. That is where, you know, you really get the most, you know, out of it and working with people. That is what I really, really enjoyed. And as you do move up, you get a big say in how the police department is run. but you lose that disconnect as far as going out there, with the people. So I really did love the street, but police work, it was a great career because it was all different. There's no book that tells you how to handle situations. You got your laws and your court cases and your policies and that to kind of guide you. But mostly you have to go on every call and then try to put the pieces together and how best to respond. There's just no one size fits all for answers out there. So this is true for officers handling sudden death report assignments. The timing of some deaths are expected because of their health dwindling due to age or because of someone that has maybe a terminal illness. Although very difficult for all, some families are emotionally prepared to handle this when it's expected. And others are still, even though it's expected, have a very difficult time to handle it. Then when it's an unexpected death, either from an accident or maybe a sudden medical condition such as a heart attack, something like that, or probably the most difficult would be a suicide or a homicide. There the officer's walking into an environment that is very, very highly charged emotionally. So that's one of the most difficult calls that I would respond to, because you feel you're an outsider and you have to be like Joe Friday from the FBI series. You're there to get the facts, but yet you're in a very, very emotional environment there. In 1991, exactly 19 years from tomorrow, a very defining moment in my career was responding to the horrific tragedy of a little 3-year-old girl that was struck by an automobile crossing the street right in front of her house. I pulled up on the scene and the paramedics and a police officer was performing CPR on this little girl. Well, I seen a mom over there that I knew, and I knew that she had lived right there. And so I walked up there, and she was very calm and consoling the driver of this vehicle. And I asked her who the little girl was. And she said, "It's mine. That's my Emma." So the ambulance was transported up to the hospital, and I brought her son in the car with me and followed the ambulance up there. And her husband just met him there at the hospital. He came straight from his work downtown. So when we got there, they had a little private room for the family, the waiting room for the family there. And the chaplain arrived there, and Father Dan Mayo was an associate priest here at St. Paul the Cross. He also arrived there at the hospital, was in there with the family. So I was off in a separate area with the paramedics and the officer when they notified us that Emma had died, that Emma didn't make it. A few minutes later, when a nurse kind of approached me in a panic mode, she knew that I knew the family, and she says, "You have to get in there. They won't believe the hospital that their little girl had died." So I'm thinking, what am I going to say? You have the chaplain in there, you have the doctor in there, and you have Father Mayo in there. And I didn't know what I would say. So I went in there, and what did I say? I said nothing. I just gave a hug. I didn't want to, I think, maybe shed a few tears with her, and then just expressed, my sorrow for their loss, so much. She was in there with, her husband and her brother. Actually, her little daughter went across the street because her brother that she adored was over there cutting the grass, realized he wasn't supposed to be over there, and then went back. But that was enough, just to be there. And after I left, I thought, wow, not that I did anything wonderful, as far as a wonderful job, but I just really felt strongly that the Lord used me to, help this family come to the realization, that their little girl, was gone. And as difficult as that was, that was a really good feeling that I could give this family, after such a horrific tragedy, that little bit of comfort. So after that, I had no problem really going to any of these sudden death calls anymore. I really kind of felt like, that was something that I could be used for and be helpful for. So, as a supervisor, I was a lieutenant at a time. I had flexibility to go on any of the calls that was put over there. So anytime there was a call of a sudden death, I tried, if I could, to make it over there, just to offer some condolences and to express our sorrow for their loss, and also to see if there's anything the department can do, because there's a lot of questions, especially when it's unexpected. There's a lot of questions that they have. Even if I was off duty, if I came in and found out that I was off duty, that some family that I knew had someone pass away, I would try to get over there if I could, because I could just see that it did show some comfort. Because I learned it's not what you say, it's just that you're there, and that you're there. They know that they realize that somebody cares. Close to a decade later, I was on the receiving end of this response and could only then really understand its impact. I'll put my glasses on. My wife of 20 years was killed in a car accident in which the van that her and I and 8 of our 10 children were riding in, along with a friend of ours, Maggie Burke's daughter, if anybody knows Maggie, when it rolled over several times. My deputy chief, a fellow commander, a sergeant, and a patrol officer drove all the way down to Springfield, where this accident occurred at, just to express their sorrow and just offer anything that they could do to assist me. When we drove back from Springfield on Saturday, Father Carl Morello, the pastor at the time, was standing in our driveway, just waiting there to greet us and to offer his condolences and anything that he could do. And I don't remember anything that any one of them said. I just remember that they were there. It couldn't have been easy for them, but I knew at that time that I was not alone. That was very comforting to go there and to see your priest there and to see your fellow workers there behind you. That Monday, I was walking, this was on Saturday, so then Monday, and I woke up and I was walking to church. I lived right around on the other side of the railroad tracks, so I thought I'd get up and go to church and say some prayers for Lynn. And as I'm walking up Summit, I see a teacher coming in the opposite direction towards me. And she kind of had a startled look, and she gave me a hug and gave me her condolences. What was funny was later on when I was speaking to her, she revealed that when she saw me, she just wanted to crawl under a rock and hide because she didn't know what to say. So I'm so glad that she didn't. She would have got so dirty. But it does mean a lot. And I could share other stories there too, that people walking by our house, they don't want to come in, because you're really at a word for loss. And, from my experience, the words aren't the important thing. It's knowing that, the people are there for you. Another uncomfortable situation for me was to be involved around when someone that I knew, from a family that I knew, was arrested. It was usually the kid, but sometimes it was, the parents. And they were arrested. And then you're either involved with it around there, and, you have to talk to them. But over time, I became very comfortable with that because there too, I felt that in my position, I was able to give them assistance. Not to get out of it, but I was able to be using my position there to talk to these parents. And first, and I would always tell them that their world is not ending, that the newspapers that their names are printed in will be used for tomorrow's garbage, and next week there'll be other gossip to be put in there. So I just wanted to reassure them that life will go on, and that their embarrassment would be forgotten about for the most part. But second, without revealing too much, I would have to admit that after so many tries, not one of my kids were perfect. I didn't get all these gray hairs from sweeping up their angel dust. But then, believe it or not, I wasn't a perfect kid either. So I could relate to their anger. I could relate to their, their disappointment and their embarrassment. And I would never judge them on the mistakes that their children, made. If I did that, I'd have to judge myself 13 times over. So we'll talk more about those at the end as far as, situations there. But I just felt that I could do good there just to give them reassurance that their world's not ending and, we all go through it. So God works through others. I've learned that many times over. And one story that I was sharing with Jeff that he wanted to share with me was in 1989, my wife Lynn and I, with our oldest son Tom, who was 10 at the time, and daughter Beth, who had been 9 at the time, we took a trip to Medjugorje. We went on a pilgrimage to Medjugorje. And so most of our group there was from a parish from San Antonio, Texas. And even the spiritual advisor was a priest from that church. So he pretty much knew everybody. There's probably out of the whole busload, maybe about 5 or 6 of us that weren't from this parish in San Antonio. So then one evening, our group gathered in a large room and the priest wanted us to share what our experiences were. Some people saw the miracle of the sun while we were climbing up the hill, and others were telling stories how they could smell the fragrance of roses and there were none around there. And he noticed the one lady in her wheelchair there that he knew because she was from his parish, and she was just sitting there very quiet. So he asked her, "Friend, what experience did you have?" And she said, "Nothing." So then he said, "Well, what did you hope for when you came on this pilgrimage?" And she says, "Well, I wanted to be able to walk again." And she had some degenerate, disease that she was explaining how she had rods in her back at one time. I think they were taken out, but she hadn't walked for a long time. She could stand up and take a step or two with a walker, but that was about it. So the priest asked if all of us would gather around here, lay our hands on her, and pray for her. So there was way too many of us for all of us to lay hands on. Oh, another one that went with us, it was my 11-year-old niece from Omaha. She went on the trip with us. So my 11-year-old niece put her hand on her knee, and she really tensed up because it's always painful when she does that. And everybody else in that front row kind of laid their hands on her. And then the rest of us were just, kind of like in a football huddle, standing back there with our hands on the person in front of us. So I'm standing there with my hand on my wife's shoulder there and praying for this woman. And all of a sudden I felt this electricity going through down my arm and through my finger. So I'm sitting there peeking through, here to see, am I cutting off the circulation here? What's this tingling sensation I got here? And it wasn't. It was just laying right up there. And then the woman says, "Oh, I got to take this off." She got very, very warm, and she had to get out of her jacket. It was very cool over there. So she takes her jacket off, and then she wanted to stand up. So she stands up and she cautiously walks, back and forth a little bit, and then a little bit faster, and she was just so elated. She was as happy as can be. And she points to my 11-year-old niece and she says, "You healed me." Well, 11 years old, that frightened the dickens out of my niece, and she started crying, And so the priest was quick to interject. He says, "Men, we can't heal people, miraculous people. God heals people. And he loves to work through children." This all kind of relates together is if we let God work through us, he will. I think even, we're all sinners and we think of ourselves sinners. We know better than anybody else. So sometimes we feel that we're just not worthy, of it. And that's, I think, something that's important to overcome, that we're all sinners, but we still have to be open, to God to let him use us and do his work through us.